Hey folks, Scott Walters here. Welcome back to the Bulletproof Garage. This is episode 6 of Project Brutus, and I am pumped. Why? Because we are going to rotate the selectors on our ratchets from counterclockwise to clockwise. Yes, we're going to start putting parts back on the truck for a change. All right, and we're going to be working on the front suspension, specifically working on getting it ready for that Dana 60. So if the good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we're going to have that ready to bolt in by the end of the episode. All right, folks, you know what's coming. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride here on the Bulletproof Garage. All right, folks, before we get started, let me explain to you what we have going on here. First, when I sourced the Dana 60 for this truck, it came complete with the entire front half of the truck. Here's how that happened. I found a Dana 60, it was about 2 hours away. I agreed on price with the seller and he agreed to deliver it. What I didn't realize is he was going to deliver basically the whole front end of the truck. It was like a 1990 F350 cutoff. I don't know, where was it cut off? Probably right around here somewhere. I didn't have any sheet metal, I didn't have the engine, but I had the frame, the complete frame, and the Dana 60, the steering box and a few other things, right? And initially I was a bit perturbed. Frankly, I didn't know how I was going to get it out of the back of his truck, but we managed to get it out with a tractor. But what I did then is I ended up keeping the frame because I knew that the two-wheel drive and the four-wheel drive frames are different, right? Because remember, the two-wheel drive is an independent front suspension with coil springs, and the four-wheel drive is a solid axle front suspension with leaf springs. So not only does the two-wheel drive frame not have these brackets, it doesn't have the holes for them either. So I needed the four-wheel drive frame in order to know if I was putting these fancy brackets from Skies in the right spot. We will need it again for the front of the truck, but what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take some measurements off of this frame. I'm going to transfer them to the two-wheel drive frame, and we're going to drill some holes and get moving. All right, let's get started. Hey folks, one thing I neglected to mention, we are using Super Duty leaf springs for this swap. They're a little longer than the leaf springs that came on this truck, all right? But the mounts here are using the factory holes, the factory location. So in a four-wheel drive truck, you would just chisel these off and then bolt this into the same spot. Again, on a two-wheel drive truck, we've got to figure out where this bolts in, all right? Okay, after looking at it, I think the easiest thing to do is to remove these factory brackets from a four-wheel drive frame and then mock them up on the two-wheel drive frame using the body mount as a reference. The body mount is not going to change. It's going to be in the same spot, two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. So if we get this in the same spot in relation to the body mount, we'll be good. All right, it was a lot easier than last time. Work smarter, not harder. Okay, here's what I've done. I've taken the factory four-wheel drive leaf spring bracket right here, and I just mocked it up on the two-wheel drive frame. We're on the driver's side, and this is the rear mount. And basically using this as a reference, the body mount, and checking with the spacing in between the rivet heads and the bolt holes on the four-wheel drive frame, I've got it in place. And I went ahead and secured it with some clamps, and now I'm just going to take a scribe and mark those holes and then remove the clamp and drill them. All right, now it's starting to rain, so let me get out of the rain. All right, well, it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn close. Okay, folks, for our next conundrum, we need to figure out how to mount this bracket right here. So this is the bracket from Sky, and this is what the spring hanger is going to mount to up front. All right, so that's just stuck into place there on the passenger side. On the driver's side here, I've pulled out the four-wheel drive frame again because we're going to need that as a reference point. This hole right here needs to line up with this hole right here. All right. Now, when we're looking over at the two-wheel drive frame, well, lo and behold, that hole is missing in action. So it would be in this area. So what we're going to do, we meaning I, is I'm going to go ahead and remove this core support bracket. All right. Again, we've already removed that from the two-wheel drive frame. But once that's out the way, I think it'll be fairly easy to use some calipers and figure out the location of this hole, bracketing off of this hole, and there's two more rivets in there. I don't know if you can see them. So we can sort of triangulate, hell, I might even use some geometry, and figure out exactly where this hole, or within a 1/16 of an inch or so, of where that hole ought to be on both sides. And once we have it marked, we'll go ahead and drill it. All right, folks, as you can see, the steering box which sat right here is off. And looking behind it, there's maybe, I don't know, a good ½ inch of grime back there. And the rest of the cross member here in the frame is pretty filthy, so might as well clean it up. All right, so let's get after it. Okay, folks, it is that time again, all right? If there happens to be anybody out there watching this video besides my mom and my daughter, hey, maybe somebody accidentally ended up here, all right? If so, I'm talking to you. Please do me a favor and hit the like button and the subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Thanks. Now back to the video. All right, folks, the next issue is we've got to get the spring hanger on, all right? And that mounts to the frame right here. In that configuration, but the problem is that the frame has spread out some. So, it should be about 40 inches from outside to outside. And I'm getting just a tad over 40 1/4. Now the folks at Skies Off-Road tell me that that's not uncommon and just need to bring it in a little bit. So we're going to use some precision equipment here and bring it in about 1/4 inch or so. And you can see I've got my trusty ratchet strap here. So let's get after it. All right, that's actually about it. So let's test and see if it'll fit now. Almost. Yeah. And obviously once I relieve the tension on the strap, the metal's likely going to spring back a little bit. So I want to bring it in a little bit more than 40 inches. It's still a little tight. All right. That's where we need to be, but I'm wondering if it might not spring back a little bit once I release it. So I'm gonna take it one more notch. If I can. All right, let's go ahead and release and see if it holds. Wow. That sprang back a lot. Nope, no longer gonna fit. Yeah, I'm still getting about 40 1/8, so gonna need to come in again. All right, let's try it now. I'm getting right at 40 here, so I think I'm going to go ahead and call it good. If I need to bring... Hey folks, boy, checking back in. We are still plugging away at this. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get this video done, but I've got some great excuses. I went on vacation twice, and I've been getting rained out on a regular basis. It's actually Sunday right now, and it's about 3 p.m. here, and I finally, the skies have finally cleared, so I'm going to try to make some more progress. But if you look under here, you can see that I've got the frame painted, with the exception of the frame horns. Obviously, if I'm going to be welding on them, it doesn't make a lot of sense to paint those right now because I'm just going to have to repaint them, all right? So let me grab the camera and show you what else is going on. Okay, folks, so what we're looking at here is the bracket from Sky Off-Road, right? This is 1/4-inch steel. It came unpainted. I went ahead and painted it. I probably should have waited until after I welded on it because I'm just going to have to redo a lot of that. But if you look at it, so there's a sleeve here that Sky sends, and it fits flush here, all right? And then you're going to have to cut it here. Basically, I don't know if I trimmed off maybe a 1/2 inch of it. So this will sit flush inside the pocket. And so here's how it sits. All right, so, and you've got a hefty 5/8 inch bolt that goes through there. All right, and then the bolt is going to go through the bracket as well. Now what I've got to do is I've got to go ahead and mock this up with a leaf spring hanger in place and make sure I get the right measurement on it, all right? And once that's all said and done, then I'm going to have to drill a hole here and here for the last 2 bolts that go through this bracket. And then once it's all bolted up, I need to go ahead and weld it. It's going to take a weld here, here, and back here, all right? And so it's going to be a belt and suspenders type approach, all right? It's going to be bolted in place and welded in place. According to Sky, they say some folks just run it bolted in place, but they recommend welding it as well, all right? All right, folks, so here's what we've got going on. As you can see, I've got the front leaf spring hanger mounted, and I've also got the frame brackets mounted as well. It took a lot of fiddling, or fettling, as they say, across the pond to get it lined up. But once I got things bolted in place and kind of snugged down, I had to take a measurement from this, the center of this hole right here on the spring hanger, back to the spring mount in the rear. Same thing in the center mounting hole there. The distance I needed was 54.5 inches, and you know, it was a 16th off here and a 16th off there. And I conned one of my neighbors into coming over and helping me measure and tweak, and finally got it to where, I mean, I think one side is dead on and the other side may be off by about a 32nd, and I'm going to call that good enough for government work, all right? So, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and scribe the inside of the frame where I need to weld, all right? So I know the places where I need to make sure it's well prepped for welding. And then I'm also going to scribe holes for in the frame where it needs to be drilled. So I've got 2 more holes to drill in the frame. And again, the brackets are already drilled and they line up nicely. But I've got 2 more bolts that, just like this 5/8 bolt here, I've got 2 more. And again, I forget whether they're 7/16 or 1/2 inch that go through the spring hanger, through both layers, through the frame, and through the frame bracket. All right. So so again, 2 holes on each side, and once I mark those, I'll take all this apart, and I'll go ahead and prep the areas that are going to get welded, drill the holes, and then it goes back together for the last time, and then it gets bolted down and welded. All right, so and once that's welded, the springs are going to go in and we'll roll the Dana 60 under it. All right, so progress. All right, folks, so the brackets are now welded in, and once they were welded in, I removed the spring hanger, this guy right here, so I could paint both sides of the frame, inside and out, and touched up the areas on the bracket as well. So everything's got a fresh coat of paint, and now I'm going to put the spring hanger back on, and then it's going to be time to mount the leaf springs. All right, they're in. All right, I wanted to get the front diff bolted in before it gets too doggone heavy to move. All right, it's unwieldy enough as it is. So I've got it in place. Not an easy job to do with one person, but it's doable. All right, so let's get her done. All right, folks, I've been waiting for this for a while. Now that the front diff is in, I want to see what kind of height gain we're going to get by putting in this solid axle, all right? The factory trucks had 4-inch blocks out back. I think we may need a little bit more to have it level because we've got the X code Super Duty springs, and those are a little stiffer. Now, as a reminder, we don't have the engine or transmission installed right now, and that's going to cause it to settle a little bit, but I think we get a pretty good feel for where we're at. All right, let's check it out.
These tires are a little less than 31 inches tall, and we're going to be running 35s, I think. So, all right, I think this is fairly close to what we're looking at. Man, she's going to be big, huh? All right, we're going to need a little bit more tire to fill out that wheel well, but okay. Starting to see things take shape, all right? That's good progress.
Hey folks, that's a wrap on this episode, but before I go, just a few things. Be sure and check out our next video. I say our, it's really just me, right? Check out my next video, which is going to be Dana 60 disassembly, refresh, and reassembly, all right? That guy right there. Okay, and I'd like to give a shout out to the folks at Skies Off-Road Design. Skies Off, I think that's it. I'll post the URL here somewhere. No, they're not a sponsor. As if, but they have great parts and they're great folks and they're very helpful. All right. Also, shout out to the folks at two web forums. First, garagejournal.com. Lots of helpful folks there. So thanks, fellas and ladies. And a shout out to the folks at fordtrucks.com. All right. The folks in the forums, they are also very helpful. And we'll see you next time on the Bulletproof Garage.